Dear Reverend Fathers and friends, on behalf of Father Kyriakos, Father Dimitrios and the Parish of the Resurrection, Kogra, welcome to the 7th talk in our homiletical series, Bearing Witness to Christ, homilies inspired by our holy martyr, Elessa. Before we begin, please note that amenities are located outside the church and can be located on the left-hand side as you exit, simply by following the ramp. Furthermore, we kindly ask that you please rise for prayer, led by our parish priest, Father Dimitrios.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Χριστέ το φως το αληθινόν, το φωτίζον και αγιάζον πάντα άνθρωπον ερχόμενον εις τον κόσμον, σημειωθεί το εφημάς το φως του προσώπου σου, ή να εν αυτό ψώμεθα φως απρόσιτον και κατεύθυνον τα διαβήματα ημών προς εργασίαν των εντολών σου, πρεσβείες της Παναχράντου σου Μητρός και πάντων σου των Αγίων. Αμήν.
Please be seated. So tonight our parish has the privilege of welcoming the Reverend Father Gerasimos Koutsouras, historian and priest of the Greek Orthodox Church and Community of St. George, Rose Bay, New South Wales. Father Gerasimos has no less than 4 tertiary qualifications, namely a Master of Theology and Diploma of Byzantine Music from the University of Thessalonica, as well as a Master of Arts and Bachelor of Arts from the University of Sydney. Father was trained in Byzantine ecclesiastical music by the late Dimitrios Soulantzis, archon music teacher of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, before being appointed protopsaltis of the Church of St. Theodora in Thessalonica. Upon his return to Australia, Father taught at All Saints Grammar, Belmore, New South Wales, before being ordained to the diaconate and priesthood in 2007. He is also a former lecturer in church history at St. Andrew's Greek Orthodox Theological College, where he taught for many years. Father Gerasimos specializes in the late Byzantine and modern history of our church, having presented countless times on various subjects in this field at different tertiary institutions, parishes, and youth fellowships. Father will now be discussing how we can bear witness to Christ, our Lord and Saviour, in these challenging postmodern times. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you, Chris, and good evening to all of you. And I'm very glad to see Father Dimitri, who we have a very long association with, both as colleagues and brothers in the priesthood, but also a time very far back when Father Dimitri was one of my students. So it's very nice to see him once again, and very nice to see all of you as well. Hands up those who think the world is going crazy. About 80% of you, okay. Hands up those who think it and say it. About the same. The force is strong with you. Bravo σας. Now, this series of lectures has covered the experience of witnessing for Christ, living as a Christian in an often hostile world, and often paying for it with your blood. Tonight's lecture is about today, us. We've spoken about the martyrs of the past and the phenomenon of martyrdom, but what about us? What world are we living in? Now, the Lord Jesus explains the deep reason why we have a certain problem with the modern world, but really, with any age, any world, any civilization, there has always been martyrs. Christians were persecuted for their faith in Roman times, in Muslim times, even in fellow Christian times. There have been Christians who have persecuted Christians. and in a more modern sense in atheist times. Now, Jesus explains the reason. In the Gospel of John, chapter 15, he says, "If the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. All these things they will do unto you for my name's sake, because they do not know him that sent me." It's pretty interesting. If a civilization does not know God, it will have a problem with Christians. So what world are we living in today? And more importantly, as I take it, parents who care for our children and love our children, what world will our children and grandchildren face? The intelligentsia say that we are living in a postmodern world. Does anyone understand that? Have you heard postmodern world? A few nods. Has anyone in their university studies done or studied postmodern literature? Hands up. One person. That's interesting. How about postmodern art? Would you know the difference between postmodern art and modern art? That's okay, we're starting fresh. So before we define what postmodern is, we've got to define what modern is. Yeah? You can't talk about postmodern, as in after modern, if you don't understand what modern means. So bear with me. Hands up, what comes to your mind when we say modern? Word, just what comes to your mind? Modern. Contemporary? Bit louder? Fashion? Okay, yeah. Technology? All right. Rationalism, good. Okay. What does rationalism mean? Or before we go to the ism, what does rational mean? Explanation for what something means, okay. How about logical? Something's logical, you can rationalise something. You can make sense of it. So what's rationalism? That's when you wear these glasses that say, I can only understand the world with reason and not anything else. All right, that's good. Modo is the Latin word for just now. And what is modern is what pertains to what we have now, tora. What we are living today. What is contemporary. What is up to the minute prevalent now. In art and culture, what is new goes to fashion. Anything new is good and to be espoused, and anything old is bad and to be rejected. As an idea, modernity takes in the rationality and certainty of science, societal advancement through technological and economic progress, as understood by the thought of the age of reason, the Enlightenment. Have you heard of the Enlightenment? Which one, the Buddhist one or the other one? So this is the other one. So in the 1700s, there's this idea that the world has been enlightened with science, and yes, positively speaking, in terms of mathematics, physics, and so on, that did happen. And modern civilization took a big turn to what we are today. And a lot of what we live today is explained by the era of the Enlightenment. Now, from a positively scientific point of view, i.e. science as a method, this all works fairly fine. Engineers, hands up. Mathematicians, hands up. Physicists, hands up. No physicists today. Astrophysicists? That all works fine from a scientific point of view. New is good, yeah? Modern is good. Now, despite the irony that what is scientifically accepted today as true is proven not so true tomorrow, no one complains that science is superseded or replaced by newer science. No one criticises science for being wrong in the past, despite its unswerving claim at that time to truth. Not by its workers, but by its flag bearers. You'll see what I mean by this. We generally understand and accept that positive science evolves and is refined, and we're fine with that. So no complaints there. And yet, from a theoretical point of view, the idea can be self-destructive. What was new yesterday is old today. And this explains how the ideological movement of modernism often reacts to modernity. So modernity is what is scientific, okay? We've created the modern world, historically speaking. That's modernity. But modernism is now something different. You see, not all science is positive science. Can someone tell me what positive science is? The engineers among us? Or the mathematicians? I can't hear you. Louder? Self-examination? Ultrasound examination. That is a positive science, yes. It's it uses positive science. All right, maybe I should explain myself a little bit further. Some of us older ones might remember the splitting of the fields of study in university in positive sciences and theoretical sciences. Does that ring a bell? How old am I? Right, okay, well, let me explain that one too. So, positive science is pure mathematics, the laws of physics, and the realm of measurable, observable, provable, and applicable. Box. Okay, 100% makes sense. But then there are the theoretical sciences. Come on, what are the theoretical sciences? Okay. Psychology, that's better. Philosophy, they're not positive sciences, okay. They're theoretical sciences. In the 1920s, I can't remember which philosopher put his finger on it correctly, they're pretend sciences. Now, those fields may use the method to varying degrees, but their object is not so pure and measurable and applicable. For example, political science. How's that a science? Sociology, psychology, history, my field, law, literature, art, are they sciences? What are they? Fields of study, maybe, they're practices, they're arts, they're a few other things, but science is the last thing I would call them. But some of them like to call themselves science. Politics is a good example. What we often get is change for the sake of change. So something is good and works, we don't keep it, we still want to change it because it's old. So old out, new in, and repeat. Empire is old, feudal oppressive, revolution. Liberalism and nationalism are considered old, capitalist and oppressive, revolution. Communism and socialism becomes old, oppressive, rots to the core, revolution. And full circle, with millions of people dead as collateral damage all the way. With all those revolutions, even the most noble ones. Noble ones. They're all noble, they all think they're noble. Then there are the revolutionaries who didn't get their revolution. Welcome to postmodernity. Postmodernism. At best, it's sceptical of the tenets of both modernity and modernism, and at worst, is dismissive of the tenets of modernity. Postmodernism, we're beyond that now. We're beyond science. We're beyond all that. There is no factual certainty. There is no stability of meaning. Everything is up for revision. No such thing as universal validity. Even the rationality of objective scientific fact can be rejected. And so, postmodernism will criticise the ideas of objective reality. What's objective reality? Actual reality. I'm religious, I suppose. You know, I'm a Christian priest, but you see, I felt a bit more comfortable with modernity because the definitions were stable. I could pick up the dictionary, I could say, okay, what does this mean? And the goalpost was there. So concrete reality, objective reality is what science says. It's provable, it's measurable, all right? That's objective reality. It criticises the idea of morality, right and wrong. It criticises the idea of truth. There's no such thing as truth. There's lots of truths. There's versions of the truth. It criticises the idea of human nature, reason even, language and social progress. Nothing is stable. Postmodernism is morally relativist. Does that make sense to you? What's morally relativist? Or what's moral? Right and wrong. What's relativist? It's a depends. Right and wrong? It depends on what you think. Hey, but it depends what you think, that's your right. What if it's opposite? Yeah, both right. So they're morally relativist and individually subjectivist. What does subjectivism mean? What's objective? You stand apart from it and you say, okay, what is it? Subjective means, I'm not calling this a table, I'm calling it a chair. My opinion is this is a chair. Subjective. Or I said this. It doesn't have to be a table, it can be a chair, right? And it's subjective to the point that each individual can have their own reality. In simple terms, right and wrong is a depends, and the individual decides what is true. Not science, not society, no group, the individual. And there are alliances of individuals, and you create little tribes called identity groups. I don't know if you remember Oprah Winfrey's advice to her fans to follow your truth. That phrase, follow your truth, should have all logical people scratching their heads. Yeah? What's your truth? Does that even make sense to you? I would hope that everyone in this space would accept and agree that there's the truth, there's an objective truth out there, and we perceive it, there's a perspective, there's an opinion about the truth, but there's no millions of truths. Postmodernism can be anti-science and at the same time anti-religion. But guess what? It can also be against itself, because no definition is stable. So the description I've given above can be revised and shapeshift. Now, as a Christian priest, I was comfortable with being in dialogue with unbelieving moderns because at least the goalposts were fixed. I mentioned this earlier. And we could politely agree to disagree. With postmodernism, the goalposts keep shifting. On the other hand, I would hope that postmodernism might wake up the classic atheists, rationalists, and positivists to think outside their box and realise that their real opponent is not religion, but ideological pseudoscience. I'm now at the point where I'm going for the popcorn when I see the little civil wars happening between the various like-minded revolutionaries. For example, feminism was okay and fine sponsoring transgenderism until they woke up to the appropriation of womanhood and the demolition going on in women's sports. It's not fun, is it? One funny thing about postmodernism is that no one actually calls themselves a postmodernist. Like you won't, I'm a chaplain at Sydney University. I walk through the avenues of the university all the time. No one says postmodernism, postmodernism, right? They'll do a whole heap of other things, Marxism, the revolution, smash the patriarchy. Where am I? Probably the only people calling themselves postmodernists are artists and architects. So postmodernism is something we as historians are observing as a mentality, as a frame of mind. In Greek, a phronima, frame of mind. And you can observe this mentality even with opposites. You can have postmodern Marxists and postmodern conspiracy theorists. They're not actually friends, but they think the same way. You can even have postmodern atheists, as opposed to the classic atheists, and postmodern religious groups as well, even though postmodernism is anti-religion. They do not agree in purpose and premise, but they operate and think in a similar way. What is that way? There isn't necessarily any objective authority. There is no universal validity of science. Your feelings can overrule fact. Everything is what you see it to be. And the rest of us have to mind read you to not offend you with our words or actions. That's political correctness. So political correctness is part and parcel of the problem. The result is, as I mentioned, there are many identity groups, little ideological tribes, concurrently existing and competing for the air. So postmodernism is not one block. It's lots of little groups And they're from the right and from the left, if you understand the political spectrum. And the left itself is, you've got the pure Marxists looking at the other Marxists and saying they're not true Marxists, and then those guys saying, well, you're not true Marxists. And, we can't package anything. So everyone's competing for the air. All of these groups see the world with one lens. One lens. Since we're on Marxism, so Marxism doesn't like capitalism and feels there's a big problem with private property, and that makes people rich and then richer, and the poor become poorer, and the way to level the field is to abolish private property altogether, i.e. confiscate it from those who have the property and then split it to the rest of the population. And therefore you have brought in something new, not capitalist, but a socialist system. And so they have that lens. Anything that happens in the world, they see it as the capitalists are oppressing the poor. The bosses are oppressing the workers. Men are oppressing women. Whites are oppressing blacks. See, there's only two groups in those lenses. You only see two groups, there's no in-betweens. And anyone who doesn't agree with them is the worst person in the world. So what happens? They label them. You're not George anymore, you're not Katerina anymore, you're not whatever, you're not with your name anymore, you're the bigot, you're the homophobe, you're the fascist, you're cis scum. Discovered this one. Can anyone define cis scum? CIS scum. Okay. So when someone at university throws the insult at you, cis scum, they're meaning this. Scum person whose gender identity matches your sex assigned at birth, but my insult applies to you only if you are a white male. That's what they mean when they say cis scum to you. That's a pretty long definition, but they mean it. Trust me, they mean it. So they label them and then go after them to destroy them. In today's language, to cancel them. Are you aware of cancel culture? What's cancel culture? Yeah, destroy people. Go and through social media. All right? This business happened to disagree with the gay marriage debate. Let's go and shut them down. This bakery wouldn't cook the cake. Let's take them to court and shut them down. Send them broke. Cancel culture. The smartphone, internet and social media provide the means. Hashtag movements become viral, catch on like fire and magnetise lynch mobs in numbers never before seen in history. In the old days, a lynch mob was 20, 50 people. We're talking now about thousands and millions of people joining in the lynch mob. They mobilise, they boycott, they jam and torch. They perpetually protest, vandalise, demolish. And when they get their way, they fly their flag in your face. 2020. People are now afraid to speak their mind in the workplace in case they lose their job. Small businesses have been targeted and gone broke. Big companies now divert from their business, so we're no longer flying aeroplanes or, making this bit of machinery, but we publicly pledge our allegiance to the creed or cause of the moment. Every talking head, celebrity and media personality signals their virtue, that's a new word as well, virtue signalling, and salutes to the ideological cause. So I have now packaged the world we are living in. So how do we bear witness as Christians in this mess? Christians who, I would take it, just want to live peacefully and get on with their lives and build up a family, faced with a crazy shape-shifting world. How do we navigate through this ocean? Family. Because a lot of these ideologies that I've just mentioned, all these isms, don't like the family. It's in their literature. There's a problem with family because family teaches people to work hard. Family teaches them to accumulate wealth. Family teaches them to build and give to the next generation. We can't have that, this bourgeois family idea. Let's destroy marriage. Mind you, so for those that aren't aware, Marxism wants to not only abolish private property, but also to abolish inheritance. It's just against the Marxist DNA. They don't want you to do that because it perpetuates the world that they're against. So they will come for the family. They will come for those institutions which support the idea of traditional family. That's why the church is a target of all these groups. What's the answer? The answer is to stay the course. Find inner peace. Be consistent with Christian precept. Pray as a family and as a community. Don't look here or there. The kingdom of God is within you, said the Lord Jesus Christ. I'd like to bring your attention to the author Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and hopefully I'll introduce him to you this evening and for you to go and find his books to read, because his story is like our story. His story is like your children's story that is about to happen. He was born in 1918 and grew up with a traditional family, with traditional family values, but upon entering university, he became a Marxist, Leninist activist. As he said in an interview in 1989, the force field was just too strong. I went to university, and in our studies, he was pretty much wall-to-wall, Marxist ideas, activism, revolution, all these things which to a young person sound attractive. Now, I should say, for the record, that all the ideologies have some kernel of truth, some good in them, okay? But it's packaged with evil, okay? So Marxism is a good example. Yes, there's rich and poor. And yes, our sentiment is that, it's not nice that some people are rich and some are poor. Like we feel for the idea. And so what Christians do out of their care for everyone is we willingly share. We willingly, if you have one coat, give. If you have two coats, give one. That's charity. Marxism is not the same, because Marxism says take it from the rich and give it to the poor by force. Christianity says do it out of your own volition, your own love for other people. There's freedom in that. Whereas Marxism says there's no freedom. this is what we're doing. If you don't like it, we'll see what happens in a second. So, same with feminism. There's a kernel of good in it, and the basic idea is that there was a time when females, women, were mistreated in society, were not treated with respect in society, and so on. We would all agree that that's not a nice thing. But at some point feminism morphs and mutates and becomes smash malehood, smash the patriarchy. It becomes this revolutionary monster. It becomes this, all right, well, let's do to them what they did to us. And so there's this constant war. There's no peace. There's no talk about the complementarity of male and female and how good that might be. It's all war. When Hitler's Nazis invaded Russia, Alexander rushed to sign up. After initially being rejected for health reasons, he was called up a while later, and he turned up with Engels in his baggage. Engels is not a type of vegetable soup. Who knows what Engels is? You're all learning something new tonight. So communism has three big fathers who intellectually wrote the books. There's Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Vladimir Lenin. Okay, they're the three fathers. If you see the big communist banners of the 1920s, they're the three heads. Okay, so he's turned up not with vegetable soup to fight the war, but with a book with Engels in his baggage. That's how convinced he was. His conviction in Marxism and communism. He fights in the war, and it's 1945, just as the war was about to finish. He happens to write a letter to someone in which he criticises the Soviet leader, the one after Lenin, so Stalin, Joseph Stalin, for not being Marxist enough. Yeah? Now, we've heard this before. Right, every time we say Marxism doesn't work, communism doesn't work, the Marxists and communists say it wasn't real Marxism. So what happened to a person who criticises the boss? He was punished, exiled to a gulag. Anyone familiar with the gulag? The gulag was a concentration camp, a detention camp for people who weren't towing the line. Their crimes: criticising or questioning, being late to work. Mind you, they've taken over all the businesses. All the businesses and factories were now state-controlled, and so the oppressive bourgeois, who was the work givers, they were all finished off. The government takes over and they're punishing people for being late to work. The oppressed become the oppressors. So you're late to work, gone. Teach you a lesson so that everyone can be early to work or on time with work. Not agreeing with the confiscation of their hard-earned property by a state that believed in equality. They didn't just confiscate because we want to be nasty to people. They had a good reason. If you read their manifestos and their policy announcements, and you didn't know that it was communist at the top, you'd vote for them. That's how nice it all sounded. Mind you, remember that for when you go to the ballot box next time. You don't vote for something that you like how it sounds. Read between the lines and see where they're coming from and where they're going. Where was I? This was a state that believed in equality. And we still have this problem, that equality is a noble cause, yeah? Liberté, égalité, fraternité. You remember that one? Oh, you remember that one from the French Revolution. They're all children of the same parent. Marxism, liberalism, all these political ideas, all these isms, they're all children of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment gave us science. We've got no problem with that. But it also gave us all these aberrations. Not that it was meant. Equality. You also went to the gulag if you were somehow connected to someone who was already considered the dissident. Hundreds of thousands of Christians were arrested annually, priests and people sent to these labour camps, because the first people to be against this system were the Christians. But unlike them, Solzhenitsyn was there because he believed Stalinism was not Marxist enough, or not real Marxism, or not authentic Marxism. But he got to meet the religious people finally. And he rediscovered his Orthodox Christian faith. He was given 8 years to learn his lesson. In the gulag, they were known not by their names. Watch what they do. This was a system which was supposed to be fair and restoring justice, social justice. We're still hearing those words these days from our social justice warriors. People who are the activists who want to make this true, to make this dream true. They were not known by their name, but by their number. Number 262, come here. Sit down, number 262. I wrote this so small I keep losing my position. Pardon me. All right, there we are. They were dehumanized. Now, that's in the East. What's happening in the West? We are talking about the 50s and 60s. At this time, at the same time, the intellectuals of the West, so Europe and America, were admiring the socialist utopia of Russia. They were saying, this is great, it's happening. Marx's dream of social justice is coming true. It can happen, it can be applied. But they were ignorant of the fact that dissenters were sent to gulags, that millions were executed for opposing the system. I think the figure is 30 million Russians. Not 10, not 100 Russians. 30 million. We talk about Hitler and how many millions he killed, and we completely forget 30 million. Or in China, same story, 60 million. And many, many more millions around the rest of the world for this dream, which sounded so good. The intellectuals of the West couldn't understand yet, 150 years after the French Revolution, that you cannot have both equality and freedom. It's one or the other, and I'll quote Solzhenitsyn in a second. These systems of thought and philosophy, they were all rationalist. They were all science-based. They were all positivist. Do you understand what positivist means? It means what is and what is real is whatever can be proven positively by science. Okay? So they were definitely modernists. They weren't postmodernists. All of these systems. But they required totalitarian control of your life. And we're still worried about this repeating itself. Now, Alexander took to writing to record the truth. Problem number one, he was not permitted to have proper pen and paper. So whatever scraps of paper he found, he would write small bits and pieces and then repeat it to himself on loop so as to memorize the story. Do you know how big the book got? 5,000 lines of text. That's how much he memorized, because there was no way he could have written it and taken it with him when he was finished from the gulag. It was all in here. 5,000 lines of text. Now it's interesting because it's in the gulag that he rediscovers his Russian Orthodox Christian background. And you know how we have the prayer rope, the komboskini, and you say, Kyrie Su Christe eleison me, Kyrie Su Christe eleison me, Lord Jesus Christ have mercy on me, Lord Jesus Christ have mercy on me. There's this repetition that comes with that prayer. That's what he was doing with his little phrases, repeating them, until he was able to remember 5,000 lines of it. He was a mathematician, mind you. Okay, so that helped. He was released from the gulag, but instead of go on your merry way, no, we're going to send you to exile now. Can you imagine? Yes, so close. 100 more days. Yes, 50 more days. Yes, tomorrow I'm getting out. And you get carted off to exile the day you get out. It was a brutal system. He was sent to a remote village of Kazakhstan where he was diagnosed with a tumour in his abdomen, and the doctors gave him 3 weeks to live. So he quickly committed to paper his memorised stories in 2 copies. He was smart. If the KGB got what he was writing, he would be exposing to the world what was really going on. Not what the words were, not what the image was, but what was really going on. So 2 copies. And one was intercepted and destroyed by the KGB. The other one made it out. He survived an extreme radiation treatment that availed him of the tumour, which was good. And he went on to write many books that exposed the evil of ideology. Okay, not just one ideology, but ideology as a religion. The religion of the irreligious. Got me? The religion of the irreligious. The irreligious are the atheists. All these people were atheists, but they were religious in their commitment to the ideology and the lens. Now, a factor that gave him such perception to dissect and interpret what was going on was his rediscovery of his Orthodox Christian faith. It's pretty cool. And this should give us courage that our Christian faith enables us to discern truth. His writings blew apart the facade, starting with the book A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. His books were popular both within the socialist bloc, the underground, as well as in the liberal West. So what was going on in Russia? You had an underground. The church went underground. There was the official church doing its thing, but those who wanted to, those who weren't towing the line became the catacomb church in Russia. There were radio programs beamed from Russian Orthodox priests in America to Russia. And so people with their own radio transistors were able to listen to Christian radio content. And from the moment he got out of the gulag, he got straight into listening to these Russian Orthodox Christian radio programs. And he was hearing about Father Alexander and Father Alexander and Father Alexander. He didn't know who this Father Alexander was. Hold on to that, because he's a very famous Father Alexander. So what we get there is that there's an underground. And so he's very secretly trying to disseminate his writings. He's at first anonymous, doesn't want to put his name to it because he knows that his family could get punished and so on. But what changed in Russia was that Stalin died, and the next leader, Khrushchev. Who remembers Khrushchev? Who's old enough? A few of you. That's interesting. So he was critical of Stalin. So when Alexander Solzhenitsyn's book, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, came out, this was good for Khrushchev, because around him were all Stalinists, people who wanted to do what Stalin was doing. And his way of securing his position as someone a bit more moderate was to criticize the Stalin version of Marxism. Okay, so he helped or allowed, and we had censorship in Russia at that time, he allowed for this book to be published. So within Russia he's being read, and in the West he's being read. People are reading this and just, open their eyes to the truth. He is eventually awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1970. There aren't many Orthodox Christians who have been awarded the Nobel Prize in different fields. There are a few. And actually, you know what? Literature has 3 that I remember. So there's Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and there were 2 Greek authors as well, Odysseus Elitis and Seferis. Thank you. So yes, they got Nobel Prizes for Literature as well. That was 1970. He also made it onto the cover of the Time magazine as Person of the Year in 1968 and 1974. He published the bestseller, The Gulag Archipelago. Archipelago means like lots of little islands. And basically, if you saw a map of Russia, these concentration camps were dotted all over the country. We're talking about hundreds of concentration camps which held tens of thousands of people at a time. Now, the Gulag Archipelago, which is a book you should perhaps have a look at, showed that the evils of the Soviet state could not only be attributed to a single man, Stalin. You with me? Khrushchev said, I like this guy. Yes, publish his book, the first one, because it's a condemnation of Stalin. Then Solzhenitsyn said, no. The problem is not just Stalin. The problem is the bigger ideology. And it started with Lenin and all the other guys who are supporting this. The mastermind was Lenin. So he was arrested. He wasn't popular anymore because he's still speaking the truth, you see. So he's arrested by the Russian authorities in 1974. And because he's well known, he's a celebrity, they can't put him back in a gulag. So they exile him. And he makes it eventually to Vermont in the USA, where he brought up a family. His sons are actually, went on. One's a pianist, one's an engineer. There's 3 sons, I think. In 1978, the hero who intellectually demolished the socialist house of cards was invited to address the cream of the Western academia at Harvard University. Bring in Solzhenitsyn to speak to the graduates. Oh, to have been a fly on the wall that day, because he was about to hit him hard, because he's still speaking truth. Alexander broke it to them that they were the other side of the same coin. He lampooned Western society for the same undercurrent pathologies that beset the communists: rationalism, positivism, and materialism. He said both systems embrace these things. It took that form there and it's taking this form here. They were squirming in their chairs. They didn't like it. And from that moment on, they turned against him. Now, he foresaw and was actually instrumental in the collapse of the USSR. He witnessed the restoration of Russia. He still criticised the system of government of Yeltsin, which was basically that he just allowed the materialist society of the West to just be the replacement for exactly what he was criticising. The West at Harvard was what was implemented under Yeltsin in Russia. And he eventually died in 2008, being farewelled with a Russian Orthodox Christian funeral. Let me share some quotations so that you can see with what lantern he was casting light on the modern world. Thinking caps, paying attention, ready? I eventually understood that the line separating good and evil does not pass through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. This line shifts. Inside us, it oscillates with the years. And even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained, and even in the best of all hearts, there remains an unuprooted small corner of evil. Now this explains, look how clearly he's looking at things. This explains why our kids who will go to university can be easily taken up by the whirlwind, because it sounds nice. There's goodness in their heart, but they can't tell that the method is not good, that what they want to effect as the cure to the problem is not good. And I can't remember who said it, but the path to hell is lined with good intentions. Who said that one? There's always good intention, but it's the implementation that's the problem. In keeping silent about evil, in burying it so deep within us that no sign of it appears on the surface, we are implanting it, and it will rise up 1,000-fold in the future. When we neither punish nor stand up to evildoers, we are not simply protecting their old age, their trivial old age, but we are ripping the foundations of justice from beneath new generations. The responsibility of us today to not allow such revolutions to even happen in the first place. Are you with me? How? Do we go out with flags? Do we go out be activists? We're Christians, we love peace. So how are we going to do it? Talking about it? Voting? Wake up and understand who you're voting for. I can't tell you who to vote for, I'm just a priest. I have to be non-partisan. I always say this. But I always say that wake up and be informed with your vote. It's really a very effective way of stopping the revolutions from happening, because they're going to come for you. They're going to come for us first, the Christians, because no matter if we're rich or poor, they don't care about rich or poor. They care that we are the enablers of the rich somehow. That's what they think. So they'll come for you even if you're poor, as it happened. That we are ripping the foundations of justice from beneath new generations. Think of our children. Think of our grandchildren. Don't let these revolutions happen. Vote against them. Don't go along with them. So, Black Lives Matter. Here they are, very honestly telling us they're a Marxist organisation. Very honestly, we are a Marxist organisation. And we are here to smash capitalism. Okay, I'll take them for their word for it. So why are Orthodox clergymen marching with them? Or marching with their cause? I can't understand this. You see, it's easy to go along with the wave. It's easy to be taken by the nice words, the justice, what's right. And there, of course, there's an element of that. But to go and support the people who will come for you, those who are saying, let's destroy the patriarchy. We're the only guys that actually have a patriarchy and actually call ourselves a patriarchy. These revolutionaries want to destroy corporations, businesses, governments, families, because that's all the patriarchy, but they're not named the patriarchy. We're the only ones that are called a patriarchy, patriarchio. They're going to come for us first. I'm the picture of patriarchy, and all the Orthodox priests are a picture of patriarchy. If we can't tell the difference, then what hope do we have? The simple step of a courageous individual is not to take part in the lie. One word of truth outweighs the world. Nice? He's speaking truth. Don't take part in the lie. Bless you, prison. Bless you for being in my life. Well, this is martyrio, clearly. For there, lying upon the rotting prison straw, I came to realize that the object of life is not prosperity as we are made to believe, but the maturity of the human soul. How Orthodox Christian is that? The maturity of the human soul. You see, what happens, dear friends, is that all these movements and ideologies are about how we can fix the world and fix them and fix others, but not about fixing ourselves. Christianity teaches you fix yourself first and it will spread. It'll grow. You will influence positively. Fix yourself. The only revolution you should be undertaking is the one inside here, not the one out there. My wish for you is that your skeptic, eclectic brain be flooded with the light of truth. Interesting? So he says, be skeptic. Question. This is what he means by skeptic. Question. Eclectic. This is important because the church fathers were eclectic. They were selective. They experienced everything. They studied everything. Classic example, St. Vasilios the Great, teaching about ancient pagan literature and saying to the young Christian youth, listen, taste everything, read everything, but like the bee, and like the bee, go to every flower, but only take what's good. Select what's good. That's what we mean by ekologie, eclectic. Select what's good. Apostle Paul says the same thing. This is nothing non-biblical. He says, τα πάντα δοκιμάζετε, το καλόν κατέχετε. Try everything, but keep the good. Human beings are born with different capacities. If they are free, they are not equal. And if they are equal, they are not free. Wow. Did you pick this one up? The French Revolution preached liberté, égalité, fraternité, freedom and equality. Solzhenitsyn is saying, wake up people, those two don't go together. Because you want freedom, have freedom. Well, we're not going to be equal because there's different capacities, there's different strengths. That person will grow or will become richer or will achieve something different. We're not going to be equal. So decide which one it's going to be. If it's going to be, we're going to be equal, you have to remove the freedom so you can make the equality. Yeah? And here we are in 2020 discussing a religious discrimination bill in Australia, and I hope it, passes, basically to protect religious freedom. Why? Because the way it's going, believing Christian tenet has been boxed as discrimination. And we would be facing fines and prosecution. So we're debating the possibility that we might bring in a religious freedom bill. And all the revolutionaries are absolutely and utterly against it. And this is what I mean by they're coming for us. They are coming for us. So you got that? If they are free, they are not equal, and if they are equal, they are not free. It's being forced on us. Or it's being forced on society, or it's being forced onto law, into law. Human rights are a fine thing, but how can we make ourselves sure that our rights do not expand at the expense of the rights of others? Exactly the debate today. He wrote this, although I haven't kept where it was from. A society with unlimited rights is incapable of standing to adversity. If we do not wish to be ruled by a coercive authority, then each of us must rein himself in. A stable society is achieved not by balancing opposing forces. That's not stable, and here we are, we're constantly toing and froing, but by conscious self-limitation, by the principle that we are always duty-bound to defer to the sense of moral justice. We, not the government, not the laws, not some nebulous idea of society, but each individual. And that is a very orthodox Christian thing to say. Questions?
Thank you, Pater. If everything is under God's providence and it's meant to be, why should I fight the revolution?
If everything is under God's providence and is meant to be, why should I fight the revolution? Oh, so why fight at all? Okay, the first thing I probably have to clarify is, what do you mean by meant to be? Oh, it's God's will. Okay, we've got to clarify that. Meant to be can be understood as God has destined it this way. Okay, so it's not that. But it's God's will insofar as he's allowing it to happen? Okay. You can argue that and leave it up to God. But the reality is that our understanding of the world is that, yes, there's God's providence, but then there's also human freedom and human will. And so our choices matter. We can not fight the revolution. And I definitely support not participating in any revolution. But as a parent of 3 children, I can't sit back. I can't say to myself, it'll be all right, when I'm seeing what's happening. Now, once again, I'm not going to take up arms. I'm a Christian priest. And thankfully, we're at a point where we've got liberal democracies, and thankfully, for all its flaws, this liberal democracy system is the best system compared to the others. Okay, what was Churchill's quote? Democracy is the worst system of government except for the others. You remember that one? So, look, we're blessed to have, the liberal democracies, because if a certain political party does try certain things, there's eventually a reaction back the other way. And it is a good challenge to the smart politicians to strike the balance, to find the centre, and to not go for extreme ideas. Now, all the ideologues would say, oh, you're a centrist. They keep labelling people. So when I say vote centre, don't vote extremes, you're a centrist, that's a bad thing. I just want balance, honestly. Why? Because their extreme, not the other extreme, is the right solution for the world. Okay, so let's put that aside. Yes, you do have a choice not to fight the revolution and leave it up to God and not fret about it. That's fine. But if you care for the future generations, and that matters to you, if you care that a totalitarian system might come into existence, as it has in the past, then this is an easy way to fight it without too much drama. What's a vote? It's easy to keep it in check. It's easy to keep it centre. Yeah? Don't buy Chinese. Start with that. That's easy too. Why am I picking? I'm not picking on the Chinese, obviously. See, we always have to do these disclaimers, right? Disclaimers, where you have to clarify why you're not being a bad person, a racist or whatever, and so on. We have a problem. China's a communist state. It's totalitarian. It has just appointed its leader, a lifelong leader. These are dictatorial systems. China, a year and a half ago, banned the Bible. Exactly what we've explained would happen has happened, okay? They've banned the Bible. Why is Christianity the most subversive thing that they're worried about? They're not worried about the capitalists, actually. They've embraced capitalism, but controlled capitalism, okay. But the scariest thing for them is the Christians. Let's ban the Bible. You see what's happening. So if you don't want that to happen, because it's already happening. Where's my smartphone? So there are algorithms in Facebook and Google and all the social media platforms, right? And there's no one behind it anymore saying, I don't like that idea. They've already incorporated in artificial intelligence of the algorithms to pick up things that they don't like and not include it for consumption. So the Ten Commandments, do you remember the story of the Ten Commandments last year? Got removed from social media because it mentioned the word murder. Well, you shall not murder. Well, a computer with AI, artificial intelligence, can't tell the difference if this is the Ten Commandments or not. But here we have an actual removal of biblical tenet automatically, without a human being behind it. Okay. So we're having a big problem. This totalitarian control, they know, if we're worried about the Soviet system knowing where you were, or the fascist systems knowing where you were, they knew this much. Today, they know this much of where we are, what we're doing, what we want. This thing's listening now, all right? And when I get home, it'll tell me, go and buy Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. All right? Here's your nearest bookstore. So, yet don't buy Chinese. Don't enable them. And not just Chinese, but don't buy anything coming from a communist country. Why are the liberal democracies supporting, see, it's business, why are they supporting the systems which would like to see us replaced by a communist system? That's the problem that Solzhenitsyn had with Western society. Money talks, and principle doesn't. Right? And we are enabling the same mistakes of the past. Does that answer your question? So I'm saying you can let it happen, but I'm also going for small target fighting.
And whether in the 70s there was this bill against homosexuality, it got passed. So any young person accepts homosexuality as a norm because it's legal. Gay marriage, not so long ago. Again, it became legal. So these things, as they move along, young people growing up lose their boundaries and the standards. And we all fight, but we get nowhere. And it just kind of reminds me of Jesus saying that this world is under Satan. It's under his control.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, that it just feels hopeless and we can't stop it. It's unstoppable. Well, the story of Alexander Solzhenitsyn teaches us that not only is it stoppable, but you can turn it around. We will, not just Christians, but we talk about it. The power of the pen is very powerful. Now, am I being idealist? Maybe. Will we stop it? I don't know. But the lessons of the past are that you can't, I'm not saying we might be able to turn it around completely, but we should resist. Okay, once again, not with arms, not with getting involved in political groups, no, in a very small target way. And if you are following on the internet, I'm not the only one saying this. It's catching on. Okay, this resistance to the mainstream narrative is happening. Okay.
Father, on that note, thank you so much on behalf of the parish for that wonderful analysis of the life of Alexander Solzhenitsyn and of his thought, and for pointing out how his brave resistance to ideological possession, how relevant it is to our current experience, and how his internalization of the Orthodox Christian faith enables him to see the truth, and how we should do likewise. So thank you so much on behalf of the parish.
Thank you, and if people watching online want to give us feedback, that's perfectly okay as well, of course. And if you want to continue the discussion, I'll be hanging around. Thank you.
And now, Father Dimitrios will lead us in concluding prayer.
Γόνος Αγίος Πελοποννήσου, γέρας εν Θεόν Ιησού Κιθήρων, ανεδείχθης ελές απανέφημε, υπερ Χριστού γαρνομίμος αθλήσασα, χείρι πατρώα ετμήθης την κάραν σου, μάρτης εν δόξε Χριστόν τον Θεόν νικέτευε, δωρήσαστε ημίν το μέγα έλεος. Διευχών των Αγίων Πατέρων ημών, Κύριε Ιησού Χριστέ ο Θεός, ελέησον και σώσον ημάς. Αμήν.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your attendance. Tomorrow evening we have our final talk in the series by His Eminence Archbishop Makarios. Again, another very relevant topic for our contemporary circumstances, an introduction to bioethics. And please join us for refreshments next door. Have a great evening.